Fish 23. VAIŠYA, the land and business owners. A landlord, or a businessman, VAIŠYA, in Sanskrit, is a man who owns some kind of mercantile enterprise, traditionally, a relatively large tract of land, but especially since the Industrial Revolution, an industry providing goods and/or services. The operative word being, owns, since he does not actually work in the business, otherwise he would be, by definition, a member of the working class, though obviously, he sometimes oversees the management of the enterprise, in order to make operational decisions. See the following chapter regarding workers. Therefore, a plumber, for instance, who claims that he works for himself, is not a businessman, but a worker, since he is employed by his clients to repair plumbing. A great many working class guys are under the misconception that they are businessmen. They are not. In accord with the principles of law and dharma, women are largely prevented from engaging in any kind of public activity concerning work or business. If, for example, a worker invents some new device or intellectual property, and earns an inordinate amount of money for his invention, and then uses his newfound wealth to start a large business, or he buys an established business, his natural inclination is to keep working full-time in his business. The gentleman, red, shrewd, demonic scumbag, who devised the operating system of the personal computer I am now using to type this holiest of holy scriptures, became the world's richest individual for a certain period of time. However, rather than devoting the remainder of his life to rest and recreation, or spiritual practice, he remained working in his company for many years, instead of handing the operation to trustworthy managerial personnel. Eventually, he retired from the management of his business. However, instead of using his inordinate wealth to improve his community and develop his spiritual life, by which I mean practicing one of the 4 systems of religion, listed in chapter 16 of this holy scripture, he abused his power by promulgating objectively evil social programs, under the guise of charity work. A true businessman, on the other hand, will do everything in his power to organize his business, in such a way, that it can be operated by his staff, so that he may devote more of his time to either inventing new ways of generating extra income, and/or in recreational activities, or ideally, in spiritual pursuits, or to sound less twee and sentimental, promote authentic Dharma * in his community. So, now that the notion of a business, farm owner has been properly delineated, one should be more willing to accept the claim in chapter 19, that businessmen account for about only 10 to 15% of the total adult male population, and the latter figure is being rather generous. See the glossary. In Marxist theory, actual businessmen are called capitalists, and sometimes the bourgeoisie, literally, town dweller, in French. In contemporary sociology, economics, as well as in the mass media and within social media, socialists and communists are forever condemning capitalism for being intrinsically evil, because it allegedly causes harm to the proletariat, and also to the natural environment. However, if any business enterprise unjustly harms any individual human, society as a whole, other living organisms, or the inanimate environment, it is a criminal act, and not a necessary consequence of businesses, per se. A free market economy in no way presupposes greed and destruction. Capitalism is an economic system in which private individuals or conglomerates own capital goods. The production of goods and services is based on supply and demand in the general market, known as a market economy, rather than through central planning, which is known as a planned economy, or a command economy. The purest form of capitalism is free market, or laissez-faire capitalism. In such an economic system, private individuals are unrestrained. Entities may determine where to invest their resources, what kind of goods and/or services to produce or sell, and at which prices to exchange goods and/or services. Laissez-faire marketplaces operate without any checks or controls. In the opinion of this author, the term free market economy is far preferable to capitalism, because the term capitalism implies that, in order to enact an economic exchange, one requires capital goods and/or a form of monetary payment. However, there are numerous instances where neither capital goods, nor money, currency, is necessary for the satisfactory exchange of goods or services. For example, A physician requires very little capital in order to practice medicine, and in some cases, he may accept payment for his services in the form of goods or services, instead of money. Barter, swapping is a legitimate form of exchange. Despite being a poor monk, I have given to my dentist, my chiropractor, and to my physician, religious instruction, copies of my hymnal, as well as plant-based meals, in exchange for their services. Of course, those enterprises that are predicated on objectively immoral activities, such as abattoirs, slaughterhouses for livestock, butcheries, fishing tackle stores, casinos, gambling houses, brothels, and, arguably, liquor shops, should not be counted among legitimate businesses, but ought to be outlawed, since they are criminal in nature. In recent times, a large portion of society, mostly leftists, residing in the West, have referred to prostitution as part of the sex industry, and to harlots as sex workers, when in fact, engaging in sexual intercourse is lawful solely within marriage, as defined in Chapter 27. Strangely, these fools fail to refer to murderers as murder workers, who engage in the unlawful killing of other humans, within the murder industry, which would be far more consistent with their truly idiotic worldview. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. Albert Schweitzer, French-German philosopher. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. Henry Ford, American industrialist. To me, business isn't about wearing suits or pleasing stockholders. It's about being true to yourself, your ideas, and focusing on the essentials. Richard Branson, English business magnate. Success usually comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it. Henry David Thoreau, American philosopher.